Infinity Nation and beyond, we look at the status of your digital landscape and how it affects the growth and profitability of your business. On the show, we will be talking to business leads, partners in the e-commerce world, as well as some of our own specialist team to give you actionable insights and find solutions to help you on your growth journey today. We will consider new ideas, stretch our mindsets beyond the status quo, and in the process discover how to gain an edge on the competition and drive some great results.
Hi, welcome to the Infinity Nation and Beyond podcast. Today we welcome Andre Brown from Advanced Commerce. Hi Andre, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, great, thanks. So I think today we're going to delve into the world of on-site merchandising and why artificial intelligence and machine learning alone won't be your sole solution to merchandising.
That sounds right.
Good. I mean, I think, as you and I have spoken about many times before, I think it's a lost art. You know, that sort of the whole inspiring our customers when they land on the website, what might be great product that's relevant to them. But yeah, let's hear a bit more about your world, a bit more about Advanced Commerce, where you've come from, and then we'll take it on from there.
So, I mean, very quickly, by way of background, prior to Advanced Commerce, I was the founder of Attract and the former chief exec, and that's a business that I ran for 15 years and really grew that from zero to becoming the leading European player in search and merchandising. And that journey included going public in 2014 and then in 2017 acquiring Fred Hopper, which is another company that people are probably familiar with. So look, my background is very much about search and merchandising, and merchandising really is about controlling the product display sequence or product curation. And as you say, it's a bit of a lost art in many ways. And the reason why it's important really goes to this sort of paradox of choice. So this is the issue you face as a retailer is your consumers are facing this paradox of choice. They've got so many options to choose from, and they've got a very small attention span. So, your typical visitor is only going to look at the first 2 or 3 pages on your site. Therefore, they're going to see a very small fraction of what's available from your online catalog. And once you know that, it suddenly makes the decisions that you take about product curation, and very specifically decisions you take about what to show on those first few pages, suddenly makes that really, really important. Much like the care and attention that retailers would pay to shelf space in a physical store. And it's basically the same attention problem, but it's much worse in the online world because there's no real limits to how big your product catalog can be. Whereas at least in a physical store, you've got a physical limit of how much stuff you can put out. So that's kind of the problem. And obviously, as a business, that's the problem that we solve with our merchandising platform. But people often ask me, well, why can't you just automate it then? Why don't you just apply artificial intelligence to it? And I mean, the answer to that is, well, we do use artificial intelligence, and AI is really good for doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but AI alone won't do it. And I'm going to run through some reasons why it won't do it. So the first reason is that AI assumes that past behavior is a good indicator of future behavior, which on the face of it sounds reasonable. It sounds like a reasonable assumption to make.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not true for big ticket items. So if you've recently bought a sofa, or you've recently bought, a set of golf clubs or a camera or something like that, you're not going to be in the market anytime soon for another big ticket item. So certainly doesn't work for that.
Agreed.
A similar problem is it doesn't allow for changes in taste or size. So, when I was younger, I really liked milk chocolate. As I've got older, I prefer darker chocolate. There's a change in taste. Yeah. Or, if I read out to you somebody's clothing purchases over the last year, and let's say of the 20 items they bought, 8 of them were cut out, 6 of them had velvet, and another 6 were kind of a certain color, AI would look at that and think, oh, well, we know what you like, so that's what I'm going to recommend. What AI doesn't realize is actually I've just described last season's trends to you. It's not this season's.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? So
Yes.
it can't really cope with that sort of change in taste. And then some
Would it also be thrown out by gifting, Andre? Like if I bought someone a
well,
present, but it wasn't my taste.
it's funny you say, because that's my next point. Is it
Sorry.
assumes that you always buy for yourself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it doesn't make that assumption, it doesn't really work, right? But so if I buy something for my aunt, and guess what? AI is going to recommend stuff that is suitable for my aunt, not for me.
Yes.
And then there's a similar problem, which is it doesn't allow for multiple purchases on the same device. So I don't know what your home is like, but typically we've got an iPad in the living room, and guess what? My daughters tend to all use that to do the final purchase. So that then aggregates all of their behavior into one profile. So again, that's why you will get odd results, because it's not necessarily your profile that it's matching.
Sure.
And then another problem is, by definition, it's retrospective. So it can't predict the future, and basically uses historic data to build a model, and then it views the world through that model. So it's all rearward looking. And just to try and give you an analogy, let's imagine that instead of being a retailer, we were X Factor, and we're applying AI to X Factor. So we give it this kind of historic data, and it says, okay, we know what a boy band looks like. And Al, sorry to break it to you, but it's obviously not me and you.
Yeah, crap. Quite happy about that.
Do you know what I mean? So it knows what a typical boy band looks like. There's going to be 4 or 5 of them. They're all going to have emo haircuts. One of them is going to wear a leather jacket, blah, 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 blah. It also knows what a female band's going to, girl band, or what a female singer would look like. So what happens when a young Freddie Mercury turns up? Okay, it doesn't know what to do because it doesn't fit into the model. And to paraphrase somebody else, computer says no.
Yes.
And so really kind of the summary for all of this to me is almost a challenge to retailers, which is, do you want to be a trendsetter, or do you want to be an order taker? So the worry with an over-reliance on AI, I'm not saying not to use AI, because we do use AI, but the worry with just trying to hand it over purely to AI is, I think by definition, you just become an order taker. You're basically competing with everybody else on the same basis. And we know that would lead to a race to the bottom on price. So, that's the challenge. Do you want to be an order taker, or do you want to be a trendsetter? To be a trendsetter, you're not going to get there with AI, because AI can't really predict the future. It's only working on what's the past. So much like the analogy with Freddie Mercury, you've never seen that before. But guess what? He'd be an amazing trendsetter.
Yes. So I suppose in your experience, in my experience, and I suppose maybe it being different at differing areas or different levels of e-com business, I think we both agree this seems to be an unloved, unlost art, or it just, I don't know, maybe I'm being critical, but it seems a lot of effort is spent on where do we go and acquire new customers, what would they look like, what types of customers, what products would they like. So we spend a lot of time and effort and money acquiring people to the site, but we don't seem to put the same love and attention into that experience when they're in store as we do in terms of trying to attract them. And I suppose I always have to try and understand why is that? And I'd say a typical business or some business we've been looking at is like 70% geared towards acquisition, maybe 80% geared towards acquisition, and then 10% a bit of CRO, merchandising, and 10% retention. And I sort of try and rack my head around that in terms of, sure, there's probably a turnover growth target that someone wants to hit, but is that the most profitable way? And is that building the best? We talk on these podcasts quite a lot about customer lifetime value and leveraging that database asset. And I suppose, again, I'm always considering tools that are going to help me build that greater loyalty and repeat purchase, because then any money I spend at upper funnel is only going to give me a greater return over that customer's lifetime and the value. And I think I don't know, I'd love to hear what you're seeing in the marketplace. And I think we're both in agreement that curating your range in the correct way to the type of customer landing isn't the norm, or isn't the norm in a lot of e-commerce.
No, I think you're absolutely right. So, I talked about the importance of product curation or product sequencing. I'm guessing you could pick almost any site, and the chances are 5 different visitors to that same site will get exactly the same sequence, even though they're different demographics. Some of them will be bargain hunters, some will be fashionistas, some will be, loyal returning visitors, some will be very loyal to certain brands, and yet everybody gets the same sequence. That really doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? And
No.
I think there's probably 2 reasons for that. I think one reason is, digital marketing is a very well-known, well-understood discipline now, and there's lots and lots of people doing it. I think visual merchandising, to give its proper name, is still quite a niche area of expertise, and I think a lot of mid-tier and smaller retailers assume that that's an enterprise game and that they're just not big enough. And when we launched Advanced Commerce, my whole pitch at the launch was bringing enterprise grade merchandising to the small and mid-tier retailer. So we've designed something that's designed to be used by non-technical people. And I think that's a problem with merchandising in the enterprise space. The technologies are all very complex and technical, so they sort of appeal to big IT teams, but wouldn't appeal to a smaller retailer where maybe you've got a web manager having to run everything. And that's really the problem that we've tried to solve, is bringing that kind of enterprise level of merchandising capability to the small and mid-tier retailer, so it can be done by anybody who looks after the website.
And in your extensive experience in this world, in merchandising and search, what would you say is the net average benefit of doing this over, like, I've built a website, I add my new product in, it goes into the new category, it comes top of category. I appreciate that's a very simplistic view of it, but if you were an e-com manager and you were listening to this, what might sort of grab their attention? In terms of what typical trends are you seeing in terms of when people are using this sorts of technology?
So we tend to see 2 metrics being positively affected. One is average order value, and the other is the monthly volume of orders, which is probably a product of conversion rate. So it's quite typical to see a client maybe improve their AOV by 10-12%, and maybe increase their volume of orders, say, by 5%, something like that. But then the combination of those 2 can be quite significant. It can be in the 20s in terms of percentage points.
And that's assuming no extra traffic, so that's from the same traffic.
Correct.
Net benefit. Okay. I think that, so it just highlights how key it is. And does it, your solution also then feed into like email tools? Is it purely on site?
You can kind of connect it with an email tool. So typically what people would do is they often do the customer segmentation within their email system, within their CRM system. So we have a function called persona. So I can create a persona within my console, and I can link an email link to that persona. So I could, let's say for you, Al, let's say we thought you were a bargain hunter, and I'm now sending out an email, or I'm targeting a Facebook ad or something like that at you. Then as long as we have that connection to our persona, when you arrive at the site, that persona will then trigger a merchandising strategy that's aimed at bargain hunters. So typically, whatever you do, whether you're browsing or searching, your product sequence will be based on what's on sale or possibly what's cheap with good stock availability. Whereas if we think you're a fashionista as maybe a different persona, then that would trigger a strategy that says, I'm going to show you the latest stuff, but maybe I'm going to show you descending price order. So I show you the more expensive things first.
Okay.
Or you could do something like, you could create your own sort of custom range for price. So you might identify a group of people who are really mid-range price. And so their strategy would be depower the top of the price curve, depower at the bottom end. So you just focus on the mid-range price. So it's about giving people a much more appropriate product sequence. So that's why you improve your AOV, because you're not showing stuff that's on sale to somebody who's a fashionista. You're showing them the newest stuff, and they're less price sensitive. So that's why that would boost the AOV. And generally, your volume of orders goes up the more appropriate the things that you show to people. And that's really a function of conversion rate.
And with the customer or the end user in mind, do you get to track or measure? I mean, obviously AOV and conversion rate, but any other metrics that you can measure in terms of how it gives them a better experience and how they then enjoy that brand or buying from that business further? I mean, is there any correlation in terms of Trustpilot stars?
I mean, I'm sure there are. I can't point to a particular case study. We do also integrate with Google Optimize, so I know a lot of people use that to try and get that kind of information on usage.
It's just trying to see that 360 view of how it's helping the retailer and the business sell more appropriate products in front of the appropriate eyes. And then I was just intrigued if there was a correlation the other way around. Okay. Any other points in terms of sort of the merchandising, the AI / ML that alone won't help you achieve your? Ultimately, we're sort of saying here, isn't it, an improvement in conversion rate, as you said, an improvement in customer likability.
I mean, I think I'll just go back to what I said at the beginning, which is once you realize that your typical visitor is only going to look at the first few pages, it suddenly makes the decisions you take about what to show first incredibly important. And yet, most sites will show exactly the same sequence to every single visitor. And that's, that's where there's real value to be had. Just figuring that out. What should I show Al versus what should I show Andre? Or what should I show Lily? And it's the ability to make a change quickly, see it immediately in effect, and start to measure whether it's made any effect or not. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, roll back, try something else. It's just that ability to be agile.
And typically with a solution like yours in play, what sort of time frame does it take to get this up, running, and generating positive results? I mean, there must be a lag.
It depends what platform you're on. If you're on Shopify, we could get you live same day. Assuming you've got all your ducks lined up in a row. I mean, I think typically we tend to quote like 4 to 6 weeks for implementation.
Okay. Cool. Brilliant. Any other bits you want to, pearls of wisdom you want to share with us?
Not that I can think of, but I'm sure as soon as I finish the call, I'll think of them and I'll have to send you an email.
Okay. Well, I think that was really useful. I agree with you. I think there's an area where more attention could be put in and where a solution like Advanced Commerce could just help all e-com businesses just be that little bit savvier, that little bit smarter, and just be, drive, more revenue from the traffic they're already sending to the site. So I think for me, it's definitely on the bucket list when looking at our growth strategies. If people want to find out a bit more about Advanced Commerce, what's the best way of doing it? Where can they go?
Obviously look at our website, which is advancedcommerce.io. They can find me on LinkedIn, or they can email me. So I'm Andre@advancedcommerce.io, and we'd love to chat to you.
Brilliant. Cool. Andre, thank you so much for your time. Great to catch up.
Cheers,
and
Al.
I'm sure we'll speak soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.